Hey everyone, Miv here and welcome back to my Completionist playthrough of the Baldur's Gate Saga with the SCS mod. And this one, it's time to venture deeper into Cloakwood. But first let me just present you the new avatar for Imoen. Now she looks like a proper wizard and she's able to display that robe of the good Archmagi. And I've also removed the blur effect from Claw of Khaz'goroth, so Sinashira still has it equipped, everything's the same about it, but just without the blur. Anyway, let's heal Sinashira before we proceed, because in Cloakwood there's a couple of different types of ambushes, and a few of them are pretty dangerous. So let's not have anything stupid happen. And speak of the devil, here's an Ettercap ambush. In this one we have to make sure to remain kind of stationary in this central area of the map, because there are traps around. But it shouldn't be too big of a deal to deal with them. Unless anyone can't get away. Oh, and Jaheira leveled up. We're going to check that out in a second. Alright, some basic treasures. And Jaheira is now a level 6 druid, so she gets access to another level 3 spell. And I think what I'm going to do in preparation for some later fight in Cloakwood, I think I'm going to go with Invisibility Purge. Now let's use our trap guy, our trap man, Koran, to disarm that one and move on. So let's just give her a little bit more of these throwing daggers. Alright, so because of the NPC project, Jaheira has a warning here, telling us that we've progressed into the spider-infested part of Cloakwood, and we should be on the lookout for some traps. And indeed there are a lot of traps, but first let's talk to Tibber.
Excuse me, please let me speak before you attack.
Excuse me. Anyway, he has a problem. Apparently his brother, Chalak, found this Spider's Bane sword, and wanted to be a hero and proceeded deeper into Cloakwood to get rid of the spiders, but apparently hasn't returned yet, and it's been a while. So Branwen of course approves of such bravery. Alright, well, we need to find Chalak. That's our mission here. And already there's a trap here. Now that we have a trap man, we can... come on, we can detect it and disarm it. And very often where there are traps, there are also spiders to take advantage of you getting webbed and just making your life miserable if you get caught in one of these traps. But these of course are just huge spiders, those are the least threatening type of spiders. Anyway, before we progress further into where we need to go, let's have a little detour here in this cliffside area, because there's one item I want to grab from here. It was added by the Enhanced Edition, and it's a Scimitar +2. And it's going to be a weapon for Kirinai, who, of course she has the Dagger of Venom, and that's going to still remain her main melee weapon if she needs to go into melee. But sometimes there are situations where we don't want piercing damage, but we would need slashing damage. And here's a scimitar and a cursed ring. So for such situations, like for example fighting mustard jellies that we've already had an encounter with earlier, mustard jellies are immune to piercing damage, and they are only 50% resistance to crushing and slashing, which is what you want against them. And of course, thanks to that scimitar, Kirinai is going to be able to deliver that type of damage. And speaking of mustard jellies, there are going to still be some mustard jellies in the playthrough standing in our way, so we're not done with them yet. So yeah, for those situations, actually we can give that scimitar to Kirinai already. So now she has access to a good weapon that delivers slashing damage. And now we're approaching a clearing here that is trapped from every side, and this is one of the traps. There's of course plenty of Ettercaps that want to ruin our day after setting these traps. Oh, this one This one still wants to get a piece of Kivin, I guess. Or Branwen now. So let's focus on this one. Just get rid of that one. You know what, I should really buff up Senashiro with shield on this map. There's still plenty of spiders and ether caps to clear out. Alright, so here this clearing or this meadow is trapped from every side. So we're going to disarm these traps. There's one in the eastern side. And there's one in this passage here. And there's one on our way to the west. This is where we need to go. Alright. So we're going to be approaching this spider's nest after we deal with these guys. And there's quite a few things to say about this spider's nest. It's going to have an encounter with a creature called Centeol and plenty of spiders. And some more of them approaching, and Branwen leveled up. She should be level 6 as well now. Yep, she gets 9 hit points and another level 3 spell. And I think, without having any particular encounter in mind, I think I might go with maybe Animate Dead, just to give ourselves a versatile spell that's pretty useful in any situation. There's another trap here, which I'm going to disarm so we don't step into it accidentally. Now, as I've mentioned, there's this creature, Centeol, inside of that spider's lair. And she has a Wand of Frost, which she is very likely to target a squishy party member like a mage with. And that's why I'm going to buff up Imoen with this Resist Fire and Cold, just to mitigate some of that damage. Because we are already familiar with the Wand of Frost. And if Imoen doesn't make a save against wands, and she is not buffed up with any protection, any resistance versus cold, she might easily take like 30 damage from that. So we'll see how that goes. But I also protected Senashiro at that, because she's our main hero. And Senashiro is actually completely immune to cold now, because she also has these Boots of the North that provide her with 50%, and then she gets another 50 from the spell. And you know what, since we're probably going to get fatigued in the next area, let's make use of some of our spells so they don't go to waste. Pretty much, and we can just buff up here. And also, why I like this place, this spider's nest, is because this is a prime area to do some Armageddon tactics. Oh yeah! You know it. I should switch this this amulet, of course. Alright, so let's proceed inside. Well, can you trigger your conversation, Centeol? So this always ends up in a fight, but we can say, hey wait, we've come here to benefit from your divine wisdom, let us speak. And she's going to allow us to ask one question. And if you ask her, how have you come to dwell here in this dreary abode, she's going to say that it was a mage by the name of John Irenicus who turned her into this blob creature because of what she did to him and his wife. And if you charm her, actually, which is something that I'm not going to do here, because in SCS she has such a good save versus breath that it's very unlikely to work. And I would, of course, attempt to charm her from my Algernon's cloak, or using my Algernon's cloak. Anyway, if you charm her and talk to her, she will elaborate on that story and basically tell you that she fell in love with John Irenicus and killed his wife, Tanova. And then for that, he, of course, turned her into this creature. And John Irenicus might be a familiar name to you if you are familiar with the Baldur's Gate saga, because he is a major character in Baldur's Gate 2. Excuse me. And anyway, it's also interesting because in the classic Baldur's Gate 1, she would actually call him John Icarus, which is a name that they later obviously changed to Irenicus, and that was retconned kind of in the enhanced edition. So he is known as Irenicus. But fun little tidbit that he was called Icarus before. Anyway, of course, you know that we have to go with this one, right? We want to know why you're so fat. So of course our humor goes above her head. and we will do some Armageddon tactics now. We have to be careful not to aim too close to ourselves, to not damage ourselves with these explosives, but we're going to use that Oil of Fiery Burning. We're going to use one charge of our Necklace of Missiles, and we're going to use one Fireball. And this should thin out their ranks, because there's plenty of spiders here. Boom! Alright, she uses a wand. Let's check it out and focus our attention on these sword spiders. Boom! So MON actually saved versus wand, and then of course mitigated 50% of that cold damage, so that wasn't threatening at all. But yeah, she was the one targeted by that wand, and it only has one charge, so she's not going to do anything else. Now we need to deal with these spiders. These giant spiders can do this single target web, which can be pretty dangerous, and of course sword spiders just deal, well, can deal some pretty good damage with their 4 attacks per round. Alright, and just an Ether Cap left. And let's finish her off. Boom! A thrown dagger right in the face. Take that. Alright, so some simple loot from the Ether Caps and whatnot, but of course the main deal is right here. So here we find this two-handed sword, Spider's Bane. That's a very good sword. Unfortunately, here's also Chelak's body, a cursed ring, and just something to sell. A ring to sell when we get the chance. And now before we head back to Tibber to hand in that quest, I'm going to proceed further west and a little bit to the south, because there is a possible group of spiders down here that I want to kill for some experience. Especially if they have some phase spiders in their ranks. And there's also going to be a trap here. I think it's a little further down south. Right, there it is. And yeah, here they are. There's a phase spider teleporting in. Phase spiders are actually very dangerous because they're poison. If they manage to poison you, it actually ticks very quickly, and it ticks for 5 damage per tick. So they have an extremely potent poison. Oh, let's have this to demonstrate. I guess he wanted to allow me to or help me make my point here. So yeah, 5 poison damage per tick. So we need to get rid of that quickly, and I think I'm going to demonstrate also our new slow poison that can get rid of that if Seneshire can get to Kernai quickly enough. And of course, you know, before we managed to do that, it still dealt like 15 damage to her. It's pretty insane, but phase spiders of course also provide us with 1400 experience when we kill them, so I still like when they spawn. Alright, and that was the group I wanted to deal with. Now let's teleport back to Tibber, and unfortunately give him the bad news.
I am here. Indeed.
Excuse me. Please let me speak before
And this is so sad. Like, how will I ever tell my mother? I was so stupid. I should have stopped this stupid idea. Such a waste. You can keep the damn sword. It's been more of a curse than anything else. So a very sad conclusion to this quest. But of course we get to keep Spider's Bane, which is a very powerful two-handed sword, +2, that gives us some pretty cool immunities against web and hold in general. And it doesn't block haste, if I remember correctly. That's what makes it so good. And even though we don't have a dedicated like two-handed sword user, I'm still going to hold on to it, I think, for certain situations where those immunities might come in handy. And anyway, this was everything that this map had to offer for us, so let's progress into the Shadow Druid territories now. Oh, a wyvern ambush. Okay. Let's try to spook this one, maybe. And let's try to perhaps use our coal lightning. Wyverns are pretty dangerous. They hit hard and they can also poison, so we want to get rid of them quickly if possible. And I think I'm going to give Koran some better arrows, so we can accomplish that. And then just focus all of our damage on this one and try to spook this this upper one. Maybe I should... Yeah. Well, let's just attack with Brandon. Alright, this one got spooked. Very nice. And this one got really, really destroyed by our damage. From Koran, from Kirinai, and from Senashira, our three main damage dealers. Alright, so that's very, very good. Now let's just finish off that one.
It is done.
And that was very, very painless. Wyverns have the potential to be way more dangerous than that. They give also 1400 experience, and they leave their wyvern heads. I think Koran should say something about us looting the wyvern head, but I think his reaction is going to trigger on the wyvern map. There's like a specific Cloakwood map where with a lair of wyverns, and I think he's going to talk about, you know, us getting the wyvern head for the bounty. Because all of these heads are going to work the same for the purposes of receiving that bounty in Baragost. Or in the Baragost temple, because we're going to have to bring that head to Keldath Ormler at the temple. Anyway, Jaheira here, courtesy of NPC Project, of course, she's going to tell us a little bit more about the Shadow Druids and their different views about some things compared to the other more peacefully inclined Druids. Here, if you remember from the very first episodes, some very early episodes of this playthrough, we've met on the Crossroads map, on this map here. We've met this, or we've seen this neutral, evil, aligned bard called Eldoth, and he is normally right here. So, available much later in the game, but of course because of that NPC Project component, he was relocated to that Crossroads area. There are some hostile bears here. And I think our party members are going to get fatigued on this map. I think that might be the case. But since they're not getting any fatigue right now, let's proceed further into this map. There's going to be a couple of encounters with Shadow Druids, and this is going to be the only peaceful one.
It would be good for you to watch your actions while in this wood.
So here's Laskel, and wants to parley with us. And he introduces himself as a protector of Cloakwood, and apparently he has a message for from some representatives of the Iron Throne. And if we are honest with him, and we say that we have no connection to that group, he's going to reveal to us that his question was just a test, was only a trick. He also opposes the Iron Throne, and since we have the same enemy, he's going to give us a very good potion of invulnerability. So Jaheira, of course, has her own opinion, but he actually delivers and gives us that really good potion. But this is going to be the only peaceful encounter with these Shadow Druids. At least, well, it's because we have Jaheira in our party. Basically, if you don't have Jaheira, you can talk to these Shadow Druids, and if you tell them that you're not here to harm the forest, or if you're also opposing the Iron Throne, they're actually going to tell you about their... Oh, here we go. They're actually going to tell you about some encampment of the Iron Throne in the eastern part of Cloakwood, and, you know, they're going to just, like, direct you there and give you some information, and just leave you alone. But since we have Jaheira in our party, they are going to attack. Anyway, since we're getting fatigued, I am going to rest just to remove this fatigue, and I'm going to change Imoen's level 3 spell in preparation to a very specific fight. I'm going to memorize Skull Trap. And we haven't had the opportunity to talk about this spell. It's very often compared to a Fireball because they are quite similar, and they are both level 3 arcane spells, but there are also a few key differences between them. So Skull Trap delivers magical damage and not fire damage, which in most cases is better because a lot of casters and creatures are more often resistant to fire than they are to magic damage. It also has a slightly smaller radius than Fireball. And it's also a trap, so it means that you can cast it onto a location and you will see a floating skull there, and it will only detonate once someone comes close enough to it. And of course you can also use it kind of like as an instant damage AoE spell. If you just cast it into a group of enemies, it's going to trigger and explode immediately. And also another thing is that it actually out-damages Fireball at higher levels, because both Fireball and Skull Trap deal 1d6 damage per level of the caster, but Fireball caps out at level 10 at 10d6, whereas Skull Trap just keeps going up to level 20. And there are some mods that you know, limit that a little bit to, for example, cap Skull Trap at level 12, so it still is a little bit more powerful and retains that unique element of it. But without any mods, you know, especially in Baldur's Gate 2, you can, like, if you have a high-level mage, you can load up 3 Skull Traps into a spell trigger, for example, and just unleash a lot of damage instantly through that. Anyway, I have a specific encounter in mind here, so that's why I'm going to memorize that. And then we're going to cast our standard tricks before resting. And let's try resting here. Alright, it was not interrupted. Let's just heal Kiranai a little bit. Now we're going to buff up, because there are going to be a couple of encounters on this map. Let's just make use of our spells, do it properly. Let's buff up Senashira with shield as well. Let's bless up and let's chant. And here we're going to meet a Shadow Druid by the name of Izefia, I believe. Oh, there he is. And of course he recognized the Jaheira. They're going to have a little back and forth between them, and apparently their philosophical conflict can only be ended in violence. I guess words are not enough to resolve this conflict, and we actually have to come to blows, I guess. Only violence can resolve this conflict. Now, SCS buffs up these Shadow Druids. I think normally Izefia, I think he would be alone here, so he gets like 2 henchmen and of course the pre-buffs. And they will have some druidic spells at their disposal. These henchmen, these normal like druids here, I think they cast some pretty low-level spells like Charm, Person or Mammal, and Doom. And they also have a Flame Blade, I think, pre-buff. They also can have some animal companions. And they're not that big of a deal. We're just going to equip Koran with some ice arrows, I think, and try to interrupt the spell of Izefia. And maybe I can also have Imlan here present us with this Agonizar Scorcher, which I didn't have the opportunity to demonstrate. It's a very powerful spell coming from this wand, because actually from the wand it deals more damage than if you were to memorize the level 2 arcane spell. So let's just use that. Deal damage. It deals damage twice. It deals damage as you cast it and then the next round. And of course, as you can see, we can move, we can direct this fire ray and damage ourselves, I guess. We can direct this fire ray to deal a lot of damage to a lot of different creatures. It's a very good spell. But of course in a full party playthrough you have to be a little careful not to damage your own guys. But there are definitely situations where it's very, very good to use. Especially since you can move. Like in Icewind Dale, for example, this spell is much worse because it like pins you to a certain spot and you can't move. So that makes it much, much worse. And of course, Agonizar Scorcher, especially when you have boots of speed, or if you have if you are under the effect of haste or oil of speed, of course you can, you know, quickly switch position. You can manipulate that fire beam and just deal a lot of damage just how you want it. All right, so here's Takia, another druid, Shadow Druid that's going to have something to say. And since we have Jaheira, it can only end in violence. So let's do more of the same. I'm not sure, maybe I'll use more of that Agonizar's Scorcher. Because we have a lot of charges. Boom!
What a simple matter.
And she ran out of her throwing daggers. Now also we might have noticed that he had the wrong battle cry. I think it's a little bit of a... Since I'm running a very minimal installation, this really shouldn't be a problem, and it's not a problem anywhere. It's everything has been working perfectly fine. I've just noticed that I think in Cloakwood there's a tendency that they will have a wrong battle cry or a battle shout. They will just say the wrong thing. Like, he shouldn't say that. And I think that might be a little conflict with, you know, SCS and the NPC project, where the dialogue TLK file gets... some of the links in that file must get messed up a little bit. Anyway, here we have Faldorn, which is a Shadow Druid that we can actually recruit. She's a recruitable NPC, and she is pretty notable because she's a single-class Druid, and that in the context of the Baldur's Gate 1's experience cap and the irregular leveling curve of many classes, such as the Druid. The Druids level very fast up until a certain point. That means that she can actually reach level 10 in Baldur's Gate 1. That means that she can gain access to level 5 spells, and level 5 in Druid are some pretty powerful spells, like Insect Plague, for example. So she's pretty underrated for that reason. She also has a special ability that allows her to summon a direwolf, but you know, overall she's not too great of a character, because in many ways she's a bit lacking, I guess, but she is notable for the fact that she can gain access to those high-level divine spells. Anyway, let's talk to her.
I am Baldur.
So of course Jaheira...
Looking for those who would fight for the sanctity of this forest.
I shouldn't have talked over her. Anyway, Jaheira is going to object, and I think she's going to have a little follow-up here. Yep. Where she urges us to refuse her offer, and we're going to reassure Jaheira that she's all we need when it comes to our druidic needs. But anyway, Faldorn is supposed to be this really angry and hate-filled Shadow Druid, but listen to her voice lines, by the way.
Nature is all.
Nature is all. Let us sing some kumbaya, friends. Like, she's the most chilled-out character when it comes to her voice lines in the whole game.
I am one with nature. Yes?
But anyway, since Jaheira is the hate-filled one and wants us to get rid of this nasty Shadow Druid, we're going to deal with her this way.
Indeed.
Alright.
I am here.
Now there are... all of the outdoor encounters with the Shadow Druids are down now. We are going to switch Koran's arrows back. One of the druids, I think Ezefia, mentioned a guy in a cave that was up to no good, and he references this guy over here. There's going to be a cave, and it's a pretty funny one. Let's enter and talk to him.
I do apologize, but I must assist thee some of the time.
So he's called Peter of the North, and because of his creature file name, which I will display on the screen, and many kind of lines that he says or we can say to him, he is clearly a reference to Peter North. And if you don't know who that is, first of all, don't pretend, and second of all, if you Google him, you will see that he is an actor in a certain industry. Let's just proceed with the conversation, which is pretty funny. There's a lot of references, but this is going to be all the NPC project. I think Koran is going to have a conversation with him, because we have we see these baby wyverns here behind him. Oh, and Jaheira chimes in as well. Yeah, a fellow huntsman of wyverns, I presume. Well, not exactly, as we will find out. So I'm going to click through this. Of course, feel free to pause as always. So yeah, he's apparently presents himself as a woodsman doing some spelunking. And like, even if you tell him that, okay, like, I don't want to interrupt you, we're going to, you know, respect your woodsman activities here, it's always going to end up in a fight, because the baby wyverns are apparently already too agitated. But anyway, let's continue this conversation. This is an odd place to meet a woodsman. Are you not afraid of these baby wyverns behind you? So of course he tells us about the subtleties of wood and wood-related activities. Even the darkest of caves can be a rewarding experience for the woodsman that knows how to handle himself. Like, there are a lot of references of, like, if you go with a different dialogue option, he will say that, you know, like, exploring natural caves and stuff like that, which can also be a reference. But anyway, this, I think, is one of my favorite lines in the whole game. Like, alrighty then, I shall leave you to your work. Far be it from me to get between a man and his wood. so to speak. This is like one of the best lines in Baldur's Gate 1. Far be it from me to get between a man and his wood. Anyway, let's pressure him a little bit more about these subterranean trees that he mentioned. Are you quite sure you know what you're talking about? So yeah, everything is just as it should be. Or here, like, there's nothing untoward about me and my work. I mean, there is nothing untoward about these wyverns. So yeah, he drops the facade. And like I said, and pretty much no matter how you talk with him, it's always going to end up in a fight. The baby wyverns are much less dangerous than the regular wyverns, and they are also not worth as much experience. We can loot him. He has the equipment of a Black Talon Elite with 2 additional healing potions. So we're happy because of that. We're going to get some more good arrows, and if we loot this container, there's going to be a mithril ring added there by the NPC project. Alright, so on this map there's just one more thing to do, and since this episode is drawing to a close, I am going to end here, I think, in front of this like tree house, I guess, in which in the next episode we're going to have a pretty tough encounter against the Shadow Druid in this land. So I'll thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This was a little bit more of an action-packed episode, and I'll see you in the next one.